Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Before we dive into our article, I launched my new podcast yesterday, Unsolved But Not Forgotten. And the first unsolved case we're looking at is the West Mesa Bone Collector. So if you have not had a chance to download that yet, there will be a link in the description with the other links when you download this article today. Speaking of this article, we have some information from OK Magazine once again and Chris Spargo about more subpoenas. And I've said it for a while now. Chris Spargo and OK obviously have a hook here. They obviously have a source, and they have done a really good job of keeping us informed about what's going on down in the Virgin Islands as far as the subpoenas go and some of the less reported on news. Now, you would think that there'd be a bunch of reporting going on in the Virgin Islands about what, the case that Denise George has going, but there really isn't. It's pretty much Chris Spargo and OK at the forefront here down in the Virgin Islands, providing us with context and content. So let's jump into this article from OK Magazine and see what Chris Spargo and OK Magazine has uncovered. Headline: Model agency founded by Jeffrey Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel subpoenaed after rape claims. The modeling agency owned by Brunel and Epstein is being dragged into the case. Well, it's about time. How long have we talked about MC Squared? How long have we been talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Jean Luc Brunel and their exploitation of modeling? That's what they have done. They exploited all of these poor girls who came over to be models for them. They would show up and think they're going to a modeling gig, but instead be sent out as an escort or told that they're going to accompany this person here or that person there. Meanwhile, what these girls really wanted to do was be models, walk the runway, the glitz and the glam that you see promoted on TV. That's what they were looking for. They weren't looking to be used and abused by Jeffrey Epstein and this vile son of a bitch, Jean Luc Brunel, who should have been in prison a long-ass time ago. But it's good to see that, according to new reports, that France has expanded their investigation, so that would lead us to believe that Jean Luc Brunel is still under investigation in France. And now we see that MC Squared and Jean Luc Brunel are directly in the sights of Denise George. So it certainly looks like Jean Luc Brunel's days of dodging around and hiding from his role in this enterprise are coming to a screeching halt. And I've been talking about Jean Luc Brunel on this podcast pretty much from the beginning. I feel like he was a key component. And as far as procurers, I think he was the top of the food chain for Jeffrey Epstein. He's his most trusted procurer, the man who would open the doors to Jeffrey Epstein in places like Eastern Europe, France, etc., etc. And it was all done under the auspices of this fake-ass MC Squared modeling agency. Just like with their charities, they use their businesses as cover as well. They like to armor themselves in things like this. Oh, I was just running a business. Or, oh, well, I donated so much to this charity and started this charity. How could I be as evil as you're saying? And we all know that those excuses and them trying to use that as armor is not going to fly anymore. You see, they done effed up when they locked us in our homes for all these months. And now with this second wave of the COVID breaking out across the world and places in Europe like France and Germany and Italy and obviously over in, Australia still, there's a lot of lockdowns coming or new lockdowns that are about to be initiated. And what that is going to do is give everybody much more time to sit around and ruminate about how they're being screwed over by people like Epstein and those who enabled him. And really, by the real scuzzbags who enabled all of it, and that is our elected officials. Jean Luc Brunel has been dragged into the Jeffrey Epstein case in the Virgin Islands after prosecutors issued a subpoena for the Miami modeling agency he helped found with the deceased pedophile MC². So my question is, what has taken so long for this guy to get a subpoena? This guy needs to be brought in, put under oath, and he needs to spill the beans. And from everything that we have heard from the models in the past, Thizia, etc., Jean Luc Brunel is an absolute animal. He has no business being amongst civilized people. This is another man that, if these allegations are proven true, and I think they will be, another man who should be chemically castrated and buried under the prison. I have had enough of people like this, especially these rich sons of bitches who think that they're going to be able to just avoid their part. OK has exclusively obtained the subpoena, which is quite heavily redacted, unlike the other documents filed in the case. So that's pretty interesting. That is really interesting, actually. So the subpoena for Brunel is heavily redacted, whereas the other subpoenas were not heavily redacted. So I wonder if there's stuff in that subpoena that could point us towards other co-conspirators or something like that, and Denise George is not ready to reveal her hand yet. But I find it pretty interesting that the other documents were not redacted, and this document, on the other hand, is heavily redacted. The most interesting of the requests may be the ninth, which involves any knowledge, proof, or evidence about Epstein's procuring young girls to abuse. So, he is ordered, Jean Luc Brunel, to, he needs to give up all information that he has any knowledge, proof, or evidence of Epstein procuring young girls. So that would mean any sort of emails, etc., etc. I highly doubt that Jean Luc Brunel is going to be providing the prosecution with anything. I'll go out on a limb here and say that he's going to say, oh, well, I lost all of that. I dumped my phone. I have a new phone. I have a new email address, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, we all know that the NSA has all that shit anyway. So why don't they turn it over? You know, while they're busy spying on the rest of us, maybe they can, pick up a child predator every now and then. I mean, if they're not too busy checking out all of our metadata and seeing what sort of recipes you've been looking up on the internet. Of all the stories that have been told about Epstein, few are as chilling as the tale of 3 French girls flown over to the Virgin Islands for his birthday. They were allegedly a gift from Brunel and just 12 years old, according to Virginia Roberts. Definitely one of the most chilling aspects of this case, right? Zero doubt. Again, the unnamed girls. It really, really bothers me, and every time I think about it, it frustrates me as well. How many unnamed girls were caught up in this? How many girls that aren't going to be compensated? How many girls that will never see any sort of justice or see any sort of financial reparations for what occurred to them? And I know the number is massive. Obviously, I can't prove it. I can't give you a tangible number. But what we have seen and the evidence we have followed throughout this whole case, it would be almost impossible, in my opinion, for there not to be countless girls who have never come forward. And these 3 French girls are definitely on that list, in my opinion. Whatever happened to these French girls? Did Jean Luc Brunel sell them to other people as well? Was Jean Luc Brunel did he have a side gig going on where he was not only procuring girls for Jeffrey Epstein, but he was also working his own side hustle? Look, these are questions that need to be asked. And so far, it doesn't seem like the investigators are going to ask them. So, like usual, we will do that for them. In the past 2 years, multiple models have come forward and alleged that they were sexually assaulted by Brunel after being brought on by the agency. And not just the agency, not just since this agency. We're going all the way back to 1988 and probably before. Remember, Thizia told us about what happened to her. We read the articles. We've heard the stories. And I tell you what, she is a very credible person. I have a tendency to believe these girls over people like Jean Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein 99.9% of the time. Considering the track record, considering how many survivors there are and how many victims there were, I think that it would be ridiculous not to listen to every single person who says they've been assaulted by these people and take them seriously. It's not just like somebody shows up out of the woodwork and is claiming that a citizen in good standing did this. These are people with track records. These are people who, one of them anyway, went to jail already for this. These are people who had to get protection under a non-prosecution agreement, okay? So they've lost the perception of innocence with me. The other requests are below. Request number 1, any and all documents in electronic or paper form reflecting or relating to any relationship between you and redacted, and redacted, including but not limited to any financial arrangements and ownership interests among each. So here's the redactions that Chris was talking about earlier in his article here, and we see that there are 6 redactions in the first request. So make sure you click on the link, you check this out yourself, and you guys can sleuth around and try and crack the code again. Request number 2, any and all documents or materials in electronic or paper form reflecting or referring to any financial transaction made to, by, or between you and Jeffrey Epstein or any Epstein agent or Epstein entity. Follow the money. That's what they're trying to do here. They're trying to build a case, a financial case here at the very least. And it's obvious that Jean Luc Brunel and Jeffrey Epstein were very connected financially, considering they were in business together. So all of that money that they were making, all of the money that was made by MC Squared, in my opinion, all of their accounts should be frozen until a thorough financial forensic investigation can take place. Like I always say, if it's good enough for the Gambinos, it's good enough for the Maxwells. Request number 3, documents sufficient to identify your employees, owners, principals, and agents. So again, he has to provide documents that all of his employees, the owners, the principals, and agents that work for him. Request number 4, any and all documents or materials reflecting or referring to travel of any individual associated with and or employed by you to the Virgin Islands at any time from 2000 to present. And while I think these are all great requests, I don't know how they're going to enforce this, right? He could easily say, "Oh, I don't have those phones anymore. I lost those records. There was a fire in my office." He can come up with a billion different excuses. So I like that they're building the foundation here, but what I'd really like to see is an indictment. And I hope one of these sealed indictments that are going to come down are for this son of a bitch, Jean Luc Brunel, because enough is enough with this man. How long are we going to accept that we have this sort of predator loose amongst vulnerable young girls with aspirations to become models? And we know that he will play on those aspirations to facilitate the abuse. So we're just going to let this guy continue to run around and people in the modeling agency are just continue to work with him? I just don't get it, folks. I really don't understand. Request number 5, any and all communications with Jeffrey Epstein and or any Epstein agent or Epstein entity, whether it be written, electronic, telephone, or otherwise. She's saying, I don't care if you had a note on a cocktail napkin, homie. I want it. I want it all of it. And These are very thorough requests, and the subpoena is very specific. Request number 7. Documents sufficient to identify any and all properties or offices utilized by you for the operation of your business, including the address of each property or office and the owner or lessor of such properties and offices. Again, that's fine and well, but all of this shit was done through LLCs and shell companies. Like we talked about in the FinCEN files in our 10-part series so far on the FinCEN files. This is how they operate. This is the lifeblood. Everything that they're doing on the up and up, of course they're going to have a profile that shows them as quote-unquote clean and legit. That's their good profile, the one that they can point to when investigators might have some questions. But we all know the real lifeblood, the real money is coming from laundered sources. It is coming from ill-gotten gains, and that was the lifeblood of the Jeffrey Epstein criminal enterprise. Request number 8. Any and all photos and or videos of any property owned by Jeffrey Epstein or an Epstein entity. Request number 9. All documents and communications involving Epstein, including, but not limited to documents and communications regarding females sought by or provided to Epstein. So basically, if you and Epstein had a talk about what you guys ate in France the night before, she wants those documents as well. All of it. All the receipts, Jean Luc Brunel, provide everything. But if he doesn't, my question is, what will be the end game? Will he be swooped up? Will he be put on an international list of wanted fugitives in the United States? Look, there's a lot of questions that need answering. And while I think that Denise George here is laying the blueprint down, and with this civil RICO case she's working on is laying the groundwork for later on, I also think that there has to be some teeth when these people try and ignore this shit. Hold them in contempt, whatever it may be, but there has to be repercussions. Request number 10. All documents and or materials reflecting any and all communications regarding any of the following individuals. Redacted. 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 And or redacted. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people who have been redacted. Or entities. No, it says individuals. So 9 individuals named in the subpoena that have been redacted. So I would guess that some of them obviously are the core 4. So that's 4. Ghislaine Maxwell, that's 5. And then the other 4, I don't know, honestly. Indike and Khan, maybe? Who knows? I'll leave that to some of you fantastic sleuths out there, some of you investigators, the internet brigade of investigators that has thrown their ample weight behind the Jeffrey Epstein investigation at this point. And there are some of you out there are just amazing at investigating things and researching things. And this sort of stuff is another challenge for you, I guess we should say, right? Just some more codes to crack. But I think what we can take away from this article and from the fact that the subpoena has been issued is that Denise George is not slowing down in the Virgin Islands. Her investigation is just getting started. She is just getting things underway. And if you had any involvement with Jeffrey Epstein in the Virgin Islands, your time is probably up. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to all of you who have donated to the PayPal account, thank you so much. That link is also included with the episodes now. As for me, I'll be back later on with the Daily Drop, and we'll pick back up. All right, folks, happy Halloween. Please, if you're going out tonight, today, and you're going to be partying, drinking, whatever it may be, cool. I think that's a good idea. Have a blast. But please, don't drink and drive.